artists, thanks for joining me in the studio for another draw with me. Today we're going to draw a portrait and we're going to get started by selecting a face to draw. So we're just going to open up my account in the museum app by Sketchy and we're going to pick a face. And I think I'll choose this one. I really like the shadows on their face. You know, half the face is in shadow and the shadows sort of further emphasize their like expression and features. You can see like the creases on their forehead and, you know, there's a heavy shadow by the eye. And even like the corner of the mouth over here, you know, there's a little pressure there. So I think that's really interesting. So I think we're going to work with this picture today. While we draw this face, I thought we could talk about how we choose to make our art. And because I think it's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking that your artwork should be a certain way. You know, it needs to be abstract in order to be conceptually sound. Or like when you see an artist with a big social media following and they are having success with landscapes, you might think, oh, I need to switch over and do landscapes or, you know, whatever. And I think the problem here is choosing your audience before developing your artistic style. And so I would encourage finding your style first and then find the audience, which I know can sound kind of backwards. In a normal business plan, you would, you know, find your audience, see what their needs are, and then create a product that matches that. But I think the creative sector is a little bit different because as artists, we need to be true to ourselves. Art is communication, and we need to communicate our original point of view. We have original ideas, and those need to be shared. And they need to be present in our artwork. For example, I'm a portrait artist, and I incorporate knitting and technology into my art. And I can't tell you how many times I wish I enjoyed another subject matter that seemed to have a lot of success with different audiences. Because sometimes collectors are not keen on buying portraits of other people. I just really love making portraits, and I feel very strongly about what I'm saying with them conceptually. I'm communicating issues related to identity and relationships, and so it means a lot to me to draw the portraits. But this means that not every audience is going to be a good fit for my art, and that's okay. I think it's a balance between your artistic voice and style and then finding the audience for your work. I think it can happen in two ways. I think one, you can find the concept before making the art. So you might know what ideas you want to explore before you've ever created anything. Or it can be the opposite. And the art comes first, you just intuitively create it, and then you think about it, and then you realize what the concepts are that are associated to it. So for example, I've experienced both with my work. I was first drawn to knitting with the portraits. In that case, the concept came first. I knew that I really liked knitting and what it represented, and so I really wanted to include it in my pieces. You know, I knew the concept first, but then for the second was the incorporation of technology, because I found that I was really interested in incorporating technology into my work, but I didn't really know why. So I just kept making pieces and exploring it further and further. And then I took a deep dive into really figuring out like why I want to put the technology in there. Like, what did it mean to me? And that's where I learned about my identity and relationship with technology and why that was an important element to include in my work. Maybe you'll find your artistic voice the same way. Some ideas come before the art making and some after. Or maybe you'll just start making art and not know what it means until it's all done. I'd suggest experimenting artistically. Try everything you're inspired to try. All the art mediums, all the subject matter, anything you're inspired to do, give it a go. And if you like how something turns out, then make another one. Another piece along that same vein. And if you like that, then make a couple more. Make 20. Make a whole bunch of them. and then look at them, like really look at them, like set them up in your house or studio and spend some time really staring at them. Because after all, you're asking viewers to look at your work, so it's not really any different. I would say even consider making an artist statement for them. And it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be something you're going to show other people. But sometimes I find that language, only has so many words. And so it's very limited and more simple than a visual language. And it can really help narrow down your message and your ideas. Once you find your voice and stride, don't be afraid to push it and fully explore its potential, like all the margins and boundaries of your work. Remember, art is communication, and you have something to say. And I want to know what you have to say. Being an artist is hard. So make sure to focus on creating art that sends a message into the world that you want to send, and make art whose process you really find joy in. And then once you have that figured out and you feel confident in your art making, then you search for the audience, that will be receptive to you. And that can be anything. I mean, don't feel limited. It can be art fairs, Etsy, social media. It can be, galleries or museums, commercial art, graphic design. It could even just be friends and family. It's whatever audience you feel good and comfortable with. When I went to art school, they really encouraged conceptual angle to your artwork, and it leaned more towards gallery exhibitions. And that's great, and I do exhibit my work, but it's not the only way. Just because, one avenue is encouraged, in my case exhibitions, it doesn't mean it's the only way to find your audience. There's other places you can find them. So I started by seeing where artists who worked in a similar way to me were finding their audience, and I gave it a good solid effort. And what happened to me, and maybe it'll happen to you, is I found that I have smaller audiences sprinkled throughout a few different art venues. When it's added all up, I have a great audience who supports and appreciates my work that I'm producing. I believe that ultimately, if you're making the art that you're meant to make, and then you find an audience who supports and encourages it, then you win.